All right, welcome to the Transfer Talks podcast. It's your co-host Ashmit with co-host Neil. We have a super special guest today who's a transfer student that is going to that actually is attending Stanford right now. So congrats to you. It's an incredible feat, 2%. So let's get it started. Neil, would you like to start it off?
Yeah, so for all of these interviews, we love to just start off by letting the guest speak on her experience, just tell us your story on how it worked.
So my name is Iliana. Um, I chose to attend community college because I was class of 21 in high school. So COVID impacted a lot of like those final years of high school for me. And so I thought community college was my best bet. I also didn't really know what I wanted to do yet. So I chose the CC route, went there for 2 years, ended up getting my associates in political science. And now I am at Stanford, majoring in political science and minoring in comparative studies and race and ethnicity.
Awesome.
So
So,
when
oh
like
yeah, you go.
yeah, so what community college did you choose and like why specifically did you choose that?
Yeah, so I went to Skyline College, which is about 30 minutes away from Stanford. I am from the Bay Area, and I chose that college specifically because it was in my county and it was more affordable for me, but also a lot of people from my high school ended up attending there and they ended up in really great schools and in really great career paths. I heard great things about their programs. I heard classes were not hard to get into. I know like in larger cities, it's really hard to get the classes that you want. So this was like more of a suburban area. And so I really wanted to ensure that I would finish in 2 years with my general ed requirements. So that was the biggest factor in why I chose
Mm.
Skyline.
You graduated class of 2021. And you decided to go to community college at Skyline College. When you started your college experience or your community college experience, did you have any sort of idea of where you wanted to go? Were you like hitting the ground running, being like, I want to go to Stanford, or were you like just sort of just exploring, figuring out what your options are, and then going from there?
Yeah, so I actually did not apply to any universities at all at the end of my senior year of high school. So I knew I did want to apply to like um top schools, not Stanford specifically. I just wanted to like target like the UC system. I know the California Community College system is really great with transferring students to the UC system, and so that was kind of the route that I was taking. But as my first semester of community college progressed, I kind of was like, okay, well, maybe I could, shoot for some private, so like USC. Um, and I know we actually had a student from Skyline who ended up transferring to Harvard. And so I was like considering that also after hearing about that. And so I was like, you know what, the worst thing that could happen is they say no. And so I just shot my shot, hoping that it would go in. Um,
Yeah, I definitely hear a lot of inspiring stories as well in community college. Like one person in my class just transferred to MIT. So just hearing those stories like inspires you to really like shoot your shot at like these really top prestigious universities. But one question I have is like, did you join honors program at your community college? And like if so, do you think that helped?
Yeah, so I wasn't too involved in the honors program, just because I felt like I wasn't too knowledgeable about it until like my second year. But then by that time, it was kind of like too late to like really do anything with that. I did do an honors research project my first semester at Skyline. I completed honors for my American politics class, where I did a research paper on gentrification in one of San Francisco's neighborhoods, which is the neighborhood I grew up in. And so I did research for that. That also kind of solidified that I wanted to pursue political science and policy and government. So that was really eye-opening for me. I'm pretty sure like all California community colleges have some sort of honors program. I wasn't too involved in it, but I had peers who were. We had an honors club. We had a lot of like advisors. Last fall, I actually had a friend who was the president of the honors club, and she wanted to like guide like or lead like a Stanford tour, and she asked me to help out with that. So that was really cool to do. Really cool to see. I've had like a lot of students from that tour reach out to me for like advice and stuff, and so that was really fun. And I love collabing with the honors club. I wish I had done more with it, but I highly encourage students to pursue like the honors program. Yeah.
That's pretty
100%, yeah.
interesting how you said like you led a tour to go to Stanford. Like, could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so she reached out to me. She was like, "Hey, we took a class together. I'm not sure if you remember me, but I am the president of the Honors Club now, and I really would love for you to help us out and like give us a tour of Stanford." And so we arranged that. There's some pictures on LinkedIn somewhere. But yeah, that was really fun.
Was it like also with the admins of Stanford, like they kind of guided you guys around?
Well, it was actually me and two other of my friends who are also transfers. We just kind of took the route that the Stanford tour guides would take, and we just like showed them around like through the transfer perspective.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing. I have to applaud you for that. I feel like the community is so like the transfer community is so inclusive where we all like look out for each other. We just spoke to someone who attended Princeton, and he also mentioned how he had a big passion for people in our shoes as well. So yeah, it's really good to have. I wanted to speak a little bit about like your EC. So I mentioned like you mentioned you did some stuff for your major or poli sci, but was there anything else you did that you sort of put on your application that you thought might have been strong?
Yeah, so early on in my CC journey, I realized, I like policy, I like government, I love that sector. And so I wanted to get experience in it. Just I know a lot of people are like, oh, I'm interested in this, or like, oh, I'm interested in that. But they don't really know what they're getting into until they like have an internship. They're like, oh, I don't want to do this. So I didn't want that to happen to me. I didn't want to go into the deep end and then realize I couldn't go back. And so I was like, let me get some experience in like politics and policy. And so I actually was able to work on a couple of campaigns. My time at CC was actually like a midterm year for elections. So I got to work on a lot of like primary campaigns. And so I feel like that really showed in my application that I was truly passionate about my major and my field. I also did a lot of work on campus. I joined the student government. I was a student senator. I got to work as a student representative on some of our community college district committees. And that was really impactful for me because, I could give like a student perspective on like campus-wide issues and district-wide issues. I also got to go to this like advocacy rally that we had with one of our sister colleges for the passage of Senate Bill 893, which actually made community college free in my district. So that was really cool. They were really reaffirming experiences that this is what I wanted to do and this is what I was passionate about. And so I made sure to showcase that in my application. And, I know a lot of students like get caught up with like shining up their resume and making their application look really good. But I genuinely did things that I was passionate about. I only dedicated time to things that I loved doing. And I feel like I was able to demonstrate that passion in like my essays and the way I wrote about my experiences.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's like a recurring thing I see in all these like pretty successful applicants. They don't really like think of like the EC list as like a list you have to check off, but more of like a demonstration of what I like to do. And I think like if you're super passionate about something, it'll show through your writing, through your statement. So I agree with that. So for letters of rec, I know Stanford, I think it required like one, if I'm not mistaken. So how did you go about getting that letter of rec and like who was it? Was it like pretty important?
Yeah, so I did realize kind of early on that I did want to apply to some private school. Then I was aware that letters of rec would be asked of me. So I actually asked my political science professor, who actually like supervised me when I was doing my honors project. And so I was able to work with him. I took a lot of my major classes with him because I genuinely loved like his passion for teaching and ensuring that his students would succeed. This is Jesse Raskin at Skyline, shout out. He wrote me my letter of rec, and I really wanted to showcase that I was excelling in my major, also like academically. And I took a lot of major classes with him, so it seemed fitting for him to write it for me because he could really speak on my performance. I also asked one of my advisors for student government just because I was spending a lot of time there. So he wrote me a letter of rec. I would advise students to get at least one letter from a professor, preferably in their field. So if students can do that, I highly recommend.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, right, I'll give you a bit of backstory. I'm attending West Valley College, so it's right under Stanford, that Palo Alto area.
Yeah.
And I'm planning to do a year and transfer. So I think I'm prioritizing, yeah, like what you said. I'm an economics major, so I'm looking building a relationship with my professor, doing research with him. I'm trying to just improve that. I do believe like um, you should always strive for people that like know the best and are also in your major because they can write a really persuasive letter and it'll show through the writing. So yeah.
Yeah. While we're on the topic of letters of rec, would you like recommend taking in-person classes for those specific classes that you want to get a letter of rec from?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because I entered my first semester fall of 2021, which was like it still had like COVID restrictions, but it was kind of like in limbo. So my first semester actually ended up being entirely online. Um, and even though it was online, I was still able to form relationships with my professors because I would email them. They had like Zoom office hours. I didn't really attend office hours, like I'm not even gonna lie. Like I was more of an email person, like, oh, let's set up like a meeting time. But once my classes were in person for that following spring, um, it felt a little more natural to form a relationship with your professors, but I was also not a fan of like office hours just because it feels like a natural setting for me. I don't know about other people, but it just didn't feel too organic for me. So I was always like, oh, like, hey, like let's set up a time. Maybe we can grab like a coffee and like talk about stuff we like as people and then talk about, you know, your field. And that's what it is. My poli-sci professor, we would just talk about our interests, talk about poli-sci. And so
Mhm.
I would like for me, office hours didn't work, but like casual chats outside of class worked much better for me. And I feel like um it's also nice because the professors get to speak to someone like on a human level instead of like, oh, like you're here
Yeah.
for hours, you know?
Yeah, these community college professors, they're really nice. Like, I think when at the beginning I was a little hesitant, like going up, I was like, oh, maybe they're busy and stuff, but they love talking to people.
Yeah.
It's their major. They decided to go to teach at community college because they didn't want to do research, but teach and like speak to people. So I think
Yeah.
definitely they're super outgoing. I think 9 times out of 10, they'll uh they'll be so happy to chat and kind of realize that. So a little not moving past like I think like mid-March, it's when applications are due for privates. I know Stanford's like March 1st or something, around that time. But you had we had to write a couple sent personal statement and also a couple supplementals and also some like interesting like 50-word little bits and pieces to kind of let them give you an idea, get an idea of what you are as a person. So how'd you kind of approach that sort of essay writing spot?
So a great starting point for me was the UC application actually, because it's due like in November. So it's a couple of months before the privates are due. And so um I know there's a lot of resources for writing your PIQs. There's a lot of like outlines you can follow, a lot of like ideas. And the UC application has a variety of prompts to choose from. So I kind of just started there. I wrote my PIQs. I looked up some resources that could help me like brainstorm what I wanted to write about. Submitted those and then just kind of recycled what I wrote from there. Except since a lot of the privates, their main prompt that you have to answer is, what are your reasons for transferring? It's a little more broad, and I know that can be intimidating to students. Like, absolutely, like it intimidated me. I put off writing my personal statement because I had no idea what to write about. So I kind of just looked back at my PAQs and was like, okay, what are things that I obviously like enjoy talking about? Like, what are things that make me me? Like, my advice is like, you should read your personal like statement, and then it should be you, like your personality, like bouncing off of that paper. And so in my main personal statement, I just, said, hey, like my reasons for transferring are honestly just academic. Like, if I could stay at my community college, I totally would, because I loved that community. And my reasons for transferring were just because like my time was up there. But I didn't spend too much time talking about that. I spent more time talking about like what I did, why I'm doing what I'm doing, and really wanted to showcase my personality. Like, if like I went back and I read my personal statement, and it's just it was kind of cringy because like I literally put my entire like personality into that statement. And I'm the type of person to like crack jokes in the middle of like a sentence, and so I made sure to showcase that also in my personal statement. And so I think for students who are thinking of like writing their essays, answering these prompts, I would say focus on your purpose, why you're doing what you're doing, showcase where you've been, and showcase where you want to go.
Yeah, I definitely think that's really important. Like, not to like fabricate anything, but to like actually show like your personality. But you definitely had a lot of strengths going into your applications. But did you have any weaknesses that you had to like overcome?
Weaknesses like in my application, like when I submitted, or like
Weaknesses overall, maybe academically, extracurriculars or anything like that.
yeah. Well, obviously, like when you're filling out applications, you're still in school. School doesn't stop. So it's kind of like I like to tell students that application season is like taking another class. So you should treat it as another class. You should treat it, you have to put in those hours to complete what you're supposed to do. And so that was a big struggle for me in community college, especially during app season, was my time management. It was really hard to like dedicate time to creating a good application, while balancing like my schoolwork, balancing my extracurriculars. And so I really, really advise students to learn how to manage, learn to prioritize self-care. I feel like I neglected my self-care extremely when I was filling out my applications. I wasn't getting enough sleep. I was just I never had time for myself. And so I strongly recommend that students start early, that they treat it as a class, it's coursework that they have to do, and to dedicate time to themselves, take a breather, take a break, but all in like a timely manner to make sure that you are going to submit a good application and you're going to submit it on time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, Stanford, applying to Stanford, there are about 3,300 applicants for transfer, and out of them, 67 get in. So like, what is one thing you would say like stood out for you or like helped you get in?
So like I said earlier, I think my authenticity really showed through in my personal statements. I feel like it was my essays that really got me in. Yeah, I just made sure, when I was writing my responses, I wanted to showcase different aspects of who I am. So I know a lot of students fall into the trap of being really redundant, repetitive. They talk about extracurriculars all throughout their essays. And the thing is, admission officers want to see all the sides to you. Like, that is why you have the extracurricular section to talk about your extracurriculars. And that's great if you want to talk about it in your essays. But I took the approach of not wanting to sound repetitive. And so I actually did not talk that much about my extracurriculars in my essays in the way that I did in like the extracurricular section. I more talked about like their impact and like what I learned from it instead of like focusing on like, oh, like this is what I did. These are the numbers. Like that is why you have an extracurricular section. That is like your resume like portion. Like I, I think a big part of why I got in was because I made sure to talk about different things and like show different sides of myself. Like I know in one of like the short essay responses, I talked about like my retail job and what I learned from that and how that shaped me as a person. And so if there is like a big thing in your life that you want to share and that you wouldn't be yourself without, you should write about that. And so that's what I did. Like it wasn't like some like major feat. It was my retail job. It's like everyday job, but it impacted me in a way that shaped who I am. And so I made sure to show that. And I hope students also find a way to approach it that way when they're responding. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. So like I'm pretty sure with like all these like private apps, like including your personal statement, you only have 1,000 words to showcase to the AO like who you are as a person. And I think like your EC list, you could definitely like restate that. But I think at the end of the day, the point of like these personal statements is to understand like, who you are as a person. And if you fit well with the community, and if you do, and they can see that, and you demonstrate it, I know I relate to you, I guess. Like I think in my personal statement, I'm thinking about cracking like a couple jokes to just showcase like who I am. Be super authentic. But yeah, I agree 100%. So now that you've already completed like the transfer process, would you what advice would you give to any like prospective like students that are in this process? Um, some things that like maybe you didn't like really like think like know about, or some sort of tips or tricks.
Yeah. So I would say, like I said earlier, make sure you have time for yourself. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. That was like a big thing that I neglected. And if I could go back, I would totally change. In terms of the applications specifically, I would also start earlier. I remember I submitted my USC app like 3 days before it was due. And then Stanford was like 2 days after that. And literally in those 2 days, I was just grinding, like adjusting like my responses to fit like the Stanford prompts. And it was super stressful. Like, please like make time, like start early, not too early, but like start at a good time. I recommend like start like 3 months prior, if anything. Yeah.
Um,
So now
and oh yeah,
you have a question.
oh yeah, okay. So now that you've gotten admitted, the one thing I love about like these schools like Stanford is that you don't get admitted to like the major, but you get admitted to like the university. And I think the AOs and Stanford's old culture is that, like you don't have a set path. And if you choose that, hey, I'm like an econ major, but I want to kind of do like CS, or I want to go into on the pre-med track, it's open for that. So um, have you like utilized that? I know you're still public policy, but have you sort of like picked up any like minors, or you have new
Yeah.
interests?
Yeah, so Stanford actually for transfers, they are very generous. They will give you aid for a few extra quarters you need in order to fulfill your major requirements. A lot of my friends, a lot of people who transferred the same year I did, are taking an extra year. I am on track to graduate in spring, so I am like only taking 6 Stanford quarters. I am majoring in political science. I think the poli sci department's great in evaluating your transfer credits. It really varies by department, obviously, what they will accept and what you will have to take here. I did pick up an interest in comparative studies and race and ethnicity, which is just like the ethnic studies department here at Stanford. So that was really cool that I was able to explore that. We are quarter system, so you do have like room to explore courses more than like you would at a CC. So that's been really cool. Yeah.
Pretty cool, pretty cool. So now that you've had a chance to kind of engage with the transfer community, like what would you say is like the amount of like transfer students coming from like community college or like from 4 years or like veterans?
Yeah. We were just talking about this like before I logged on here. I believe the cohort that just entered, about half of them are from community college. I think my cohort, it was somewhere like the 30s, maybe almost half. We have a lot of athletes transfer in. A lot of vets also transfer in. A lot of my friend group is made up of vets, so that's really cool. It's just really cool that, you know, when you transfer, your transfer community is coming from like all aspects of life, which kind of like imitates what it's like to go to a CC. But yeah, I'd say like half of the people that transfer in are from a CC.
Yeah, I think I heard like the same thing. I think one of the deans said it was like 60-50% historically. Yeah, but I 100% agree. Like community colleges, like in California, I think it's the best system in the world. So it sets you up a lot
Yeah.
of sets you up
Yeah.
really well. Yeah. So
Mhm.
do you have any future like plan? Like, what are your like where's your like what's your mindset now? You're about to graduate in the spring, poli sci, and then also race theory. If I'm sorry, I didn't want to butcher like the
Yeah.
name of what was
It's
it?
comparative studies in race and ethnicity. It's
Okay,
just,
competitive studies in race and ethnicity.
yeah.
Yeah. So what are your plans for the future now? Like, do you have something in mind, or still
Yeah.
like thinking?
Um, so this has been on my mind a lot, but right now it's I'm pre-law, so I see law school as a pathway for me. Maybe not now. I feel like I just got here. I don't really want to leave yet, so I might pursue a co-terminal degree, which Stanford offers to pursue like your master's. I'm thinking co-terminal degree in public policy, which I would be starting later this year. But that's kind of what I want to do that in my gap year, study for the LSAT, and then apply to law school.
So one thing that I'm like kind of thinking about when transferring is like the transfer community because like transferring from community college, you're gonna like not really know too many people. It's kind of like a new setting. So like how have you been able to adjust and like have you been able to like kind of fit into the Stanford environment?
Yeah, so I'm not gonna lie, like I had a hard time adjusting. I mean, I'm from San Francisco and Stanford's only like an hour away, and it still felt like a big adjustment that I had to make to a new environment. You know, everyone around you is, you know, has been here for a while, or, you know, they know their way around, and then you enter as a transfer, you know, as a first year student, you're expected, you know, to perform and to act like an upperclassman, like a junior. And so I definitely felt a lot of imposter syndrome my first quarter here. It was really hard, especially sitting in on my upper division classes and then not knowing what was going on because I wasn't used to like taking a Stanford class. And so that was my biggest struggle when I transferred in was, you know, getting over that imposter syndrome, um, getting over this idea that I created, like, oh, like maybe I'm just not smart enough to be here. Like, I don't know why I'm here. So that was the biggest struggle for me. But I'm fine now. I have adjusted, and it's really all because I have a strong community. You know, I found community here, whether it be at our community centers, whether it be with our transfer network. It really is the people that help you transition. I think what helped me was, you know, sharing what I was feeling with mentors, with my peers, and then they validated like, yes, like it is totally normal for you to feel this way. Like you are making this giant transition and it is okay for you to feel this way, but you need to, you know, make yourself like understand and realize that you belong here. Like you were admitted, you were chosen from a pool of applicants, like you have a space here. And so that was like my biggest thing that first quarter. But it really is about finding your people, finding your community, and there's lots of communities here at Stanford, and so that was really nice.
Yeah, that definitely sounds really supportive. Like one thing that I'm thinking about is like at community college that the rigor might not be the same at like the 4 year. So if I were to transition to the UC, like would I be prepared or not? Like, could you give some advice on like how to prepare at a community college level for like the 4 year experience?
Yeah, so one thing I wish I had done in the summer between CC and Stanford was like really get used to doing a lot of heavy reading. I feel like in community college, the format is like you read a couple of pages and then you do like a discussion and then you do that thing where you like reply to like two people for like points. Um, that was, I think, I don't know, I feel like I should have like in that summer really started training my brain to like um get away from like that Canvas like discussion type of format and then get into like a classroom and like actively discuss with my classmates and like digest large and dense readings. And so I recommend like for anyone um to just read a lot and get used to reading like large works. So that's what I recommend.
Yeah, I agree too. I think the difference is like it's definitely not the same. So I think taking those precautionary steps to sort of like prep yourself is important. 100%. So I think we're about to end. Meeting time's almost over. So I just wanted to, me and Ashwin, we just want to say thank you so much for hopping on, Iliana, and just talking about your story. I think this is a community it's very tight knit, but there's not a lot of information going around, especially like on the transfer process. So I think coming on here and sort of giving that insight, especially for a top school like Stanford, is really a really good thing. So thank you so much for hopping on. We really appreciate it.